Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Future Picks, Branchspace's podcast where we discuss the future of digital airline experiences, retailing, and technology. I'm your host, Clarissa Jenkins. Today, I'm joined by Gosia Korpal, product owner at Branchspace, leading two of the Triplake modules, check-in and smart self-service. With a background spanning across airline customer service, quality assurance, and now product ownership, Gosia brings a rare behind-the-scenes perspective on what it actually takes to modernize airline digital channels. In this episode, we talk shop, from how to design intuitive self-service experiences that passengers actually use, to what it means to balance delivery requests with a strategic long-term product vision. Gosia also shares tips for successful feature rollouts and what the best KPIs are to measure their value. If you're in travel or product, you'll definitely want to stick around because what Gosia says is the most important stage of product development is going to shock you. Let's get into it. Hi, Gosia. Welcome to the Future Picks podcast. We're so excited to have you here today.
Hello, Clarissa. Happy to be here.
Thank you. So we're just going to jump right into it and start off with our first question. So we want to start off talking a bit about your career journey and how you've evolved in your role here at Branchspace. And one of the things Branchspace is known for is its mixture of strategic consulting and modular technology. So what I want to know is what attracted you to the company initially and the Triplake platform in particular.
Okay, so as you said, I have a quite non-technical background. I've been working in the airline business now for approximately 12 or 13 years, and half of it was actually working with airlines directly within different positions, and having this experience on both customer service side and on the more technical operation side, and then moving on to the IT departments in the airline business, I had a possibility to experience firsthand often the struggles on both sides, both customers that were struggling with outdated technologies provided by airlines due to different limitations, technological limitations. And luckily, I found Branchspace, which seemed like a perfect fit of my skills and what I actually wanted to do. And at the time, there was an open position for the QA, which was actually what I was doing at the time. But already during the initial interviews, there was some agreement or plan for me to not stay on this role due to my business analyst experience and move on to, after some time, to some more product-oriented position.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, that's awesome that Branchspace facilitated that growth in order to meet your career goals as well. And with that unique career path in airline tech, you, like you said, initially started in customer service at Lufthansa and then moved to QA and eventually evolved into a product owner for Triplake specifically. Can you walk us through a bit more about that journey that you mentioned earlier of laying down the path of progression to inspire you to make that transition?
Yes, I actually was interested in moving into a more technical field already when I was working in the service center. At the time, I had an opportunity to work with many different parties. I was facilitating a lot of different services, supporting agencies, supporting online services and online customers. And then also I was working in ticketing. So I had a very wide background of all the functionalities and also operational side of how airlines operate, at least from the, maybe not from the ground services perspective, but from the service perspective and how the systems, especially reservation and DCS systems, are working. That's why I moved to Frankfurt to work in Lufthansa systems. Afterwards, there was a need also for more technical person to work within the Lufthansa systems on different functionalities for both airports and agents. Currently, especially reservation systems, they are not really designed to support end users in easy management of whatever they want to do. So that was basically the first really product-oriented approach to build the functionalities that would allow users more flexibly and easy to use certain functionalities. And that knowledge was a very big benefit in what I'm doing now, because airline business is a very complex one, especially the technologies that were introduced around 50, 60 years ago when the airline business was growing very rapidly. All of the systems were created, and not a lot has changed for a very long period of time. So there was a very significant discrepancy between what was possible for airlines to offer to the users and what they could. So that was a very big part of my interest when I joined Triplake, because Triplake is filling in this gap with the kind of providing the airlines the customer-centric and e-commerce-centric experience, not necessarily tied to what are the capabilities of the reservation systems.
Yeah, thank you. That's an awesome response. Yeah, Triplake really trying to tackle that customer centricity and keep up the speed. So that's really great that Triplake is inspiring you and also fulfilling that desire to make those fragmentations come together, like you said. And with that, it sounds like there's a lot of skills that were transferable from QA to product ownership. But I'd love to take a second and know if there was any new skills that you had to develop in order to succeed in this new role as product owner.
Yes, there was a very big one that comes to mind. And within the QA role, the very big part of this role is being very detail oriented. And a product owner is actually kind of the opposite, because within the product owner role, what is the most important is to create value. The details often don't matter that much, but creating the value to the user is the biggest focus of the product owner role. There has to be an understanding of the market. There has to be an understanding of the customer needs.
So in other words, would you say it's like one of those standout features that will really engage the user across those digital retail channels?
Yes, and I think it doesn't only apply to the airline business, it applies to a lot of different areas and a lot of the different businesses, is basically to create a very unique but also convenient and simple solution in any way, so that it's easy to use. Because from my perspective, we can create the best feature in the world, but if the users don't understand or don't know how to use it, it won't make any difference. It won't be valuable for the users.
Very well said. We want to provide those seamless end-to-end experiences. And we do witness that across the industry. Even when we travel as individuals, sometimes you would love to use that mobile app, an airline's mobile app, but it's convoluted and it's not user friendly and the performance is bad. So you end up going to their website instead, because it is a very large purchase, like you said. So you want to make sure that you understand and everything is transparent about what you're receiving, and also that your processing and payment will be secure. Exactly. Because you do invest, perhaps save up money in order to buy those dream flight tickets.
Exactly.
Awesome. And so we're going to move on to a bit more about the product management insights. I want to take a step back for those who are not fully aware and just give a brief introduction about Triplake, which is Branchspace's digital retail platform. It's a proprietary product. And Gosia here is the product owner for two of our modules within Triplake, the Triplake check-in and Triplake smart self-service. So both of these modules come after the booking process. And as Gosia mentioned, we really want to create something that adds value and is seamless for the users, goes beyond just the normal check-in at the airport and is able to be done digitally from your couch, from your mobile device, and provide opportunities for upselling, making changes to your product, to your flight reservations, and then on the self-servicing side, making a complete management of booking and anything else that goes even outside of the flight. And so with that, Gosia, like I mentioned, you are the product owner for two modules, and that can require a lot of balance with managing two different modules. How do you balance strategic vision with daily deliveries? And which aspect of your role would you say is the most important in finding those balances and shaping the solutions?
So probably the most important one is to often take a step back. And I will be coming to this point often because as product owners, value is the key, right? So whether it will be to manage or creating something for the self-service or the check-in experience, the key here is to provide value. And often that means that I need to take a step back and get myself out of the noise of requests and who wants something more, and take all that in and actually think about what in these moments will create the best value for the users, and based on that prioritize the work that is to be done. Not everyone will be happy about the priorities that are set up, and that is something that eventually will happen at some point. But when we are coming from the value perspective, and it also aligns with what the stakeholders require, or often it aligns. I would say at the end of the day, everyone is happy because even though there will be a little bit of a shift in priorities that will need to be then communicated to other customers or internally, usually what happens when we come from this approach is that the features or implementation of the product goes in the right direction. So even if we need to invest more time into building something, but doing it the right way and focusing on something that is important now for the greater good of the product, everyone benefits afterwards.
All right. So it sounds like patience sometimes is a virtue. And if there is a feature that a stakeholder or a customer feels or wants to prioritize, and based off of our expertise and know-how, sometimes we might suggest a shift. It's about proving that value during that shift and saying, look, at the end of the day, maybe this isn't the exact feature that you initially were envisioning, but this shift will achieve the same value that you're looking for and even be better in the long run because of X, Y, and Z reasons. And that's exactly why, what Branchspace is here for, and the Triplake expertise that we bring in.
Exactly. That also allows us to then experiment with certain features, which is also important. A lot of the times customers would want certain features to be built in a certain way, which might not be the most optimal way. So by creating the product vision and allowing for us to think through certain features and allowing us to potentially consider different options for a certain feature, we are able then to provide a more comprehensive solution, saying that we can provide this or this option and we can measure the outcome.
Yeah, exactly. And so with that, measuring the outcomes, I would love to know more about the metrics or signals that you rely on to understand if a product release or feature is truly delivering value.
Mhm.
Is there any particular KPIs that you use either internally or for the airline partners to help understand this better?
Yes, and the KPIs can differ based on the, let's say, the time frame after the release. There are some that are more important straight after the feature is released, and then there are some that are more important or give more overview of how the feature is performing when we are having a more stable feature. So the most basic ones, at least at the beginning, are the success and error ratios. So we are measuring how many of our customers are getting through a process, whatever that may be, successfully. How many errors are we encountering? How many of those errors are critical? How many are just ones that are possible to overcome or handled in some way? And based on that, we can then make the user experience that I mentioned before that will be more user friendly and help users be guided through the process in case there are some errors that are critical and that we can help them overcome, because that's usually what stops the customer from using the feature. The other ones would be things like the transactions, how many users are actually using a feature. There are some which can be introduced a little bit later. So we can use some monitoring of within the tools that are specifically to monitor the user behavior on the website. You can observe if and when user gets stuck on the website, and based on that, we can then improve the UI. All of this is focused on making sure that the end user is successfully getting through the whole flow.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, I can understand how, depending on what stage of digital maturity and transformation the airline is at, their goals and metrics will change. So if they didn't have online or digital check-in before, and they work with Triplake check-in, that the initial goal is to migrate and get customers to stop printing boarding passes and use those digital QR codes. So that would be more of a short-term metric. And then maybe longer term, one of the goals is amplifying those cross-sell opportunities and ancillaries during
Exactly.
check-in. So that would be when, the transaction amounts come into play to really optimize the already baseline experience that Triplake provides.
Exactly. And this is, we are entering a very fluid territory because a lot of the times what users expect, the end user, by end user, I mean the passengers, especially in check-in, is to get through it as quick as possible and get the boarding pass. While a lot of the times airlines and probably us as well would like to also add the value in form of different services that can be offered and upsells or other features. And this is where our data-driven approach comes into play, because some of these sales approaches may be intuitive to be working, but until we measure it, we don't really know what actually is the balance between what is still valuable for the user to purchase at this point and what actually derives them from the goal of what they want to do at this point, and that is check-in. And this is, I would say, the main difference between the self-service and check-in, because self-service is designed for the users to self-service. So they go there without any pressure, without any tension. They just can go explore, see what they can buy, see what makes sense for them. If there is something interesting that they would be willing to additionally add to the reservation. While on check-in, there is often this little tension that it's very close before departure. They want to get the best seat, preferably next to their partner that they are traveling with, or their child, or something like this. And the focus is a little bit different here. So adding too many things can be quite discouraging at this point.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I had not necessarily thought about that before. So that's a really excellent clarification for our listeners, that sometimes you can provide too much. And like you said, the cross between the digital experiences for airline travel is often intermingled. And so I would love to dive more into the individual Triplake modules that you own, starting off with Triplake check-in. As you mentioned, check-in, or you hinted at, check-in can traditionally be a bit of a rigid process. But with digital transformation and rising consumer expectations, there's a push for airlines to rethink the experience. What patterns would you say you've noticed in passenger behavior that are shaping check-in over the next, say, 3 to 5 years?
From a personal experience, as a person who travels a lot and who is around the airline business on any level, really, for a long time now, I can say that with check-in, I would put 2 or 3 things as the most important ones is the convenience, seamless experience, no hiccups, no errors, nothing that would additionally add any stress to the user. What I see very important tendency that is growing and that is actually caused by the needs are any forms of updates for the users. Users expect to be updated as they go. So whenever something is changing within the flight, or if there are some issues at the airport, or anything really that could disrupt their travel, that is something that for customers is critical and is something that I see is a rising expectations that airlines will be able to provide these kinds of feedbacks, like some disruption functionalities, being able to handle those by ourselves, informing user, push notifications about any type of disturbances, any type of issues that can, like I said, disrupt the whole travel experience and getting into the final destination. And additionally, what I think would also help is some additional items like some tracking services, and especially again, in case of some disruptions that can be quite problematic, then to figure out what are the next steps in case of like lost baggages and items like that. So I believe that this is something that will be evolving in the next years quite heavily, because this is usually one of the biggest pain points around the time when we are actually flying, to manage these situations on our own with the appropriate updates and getting into the some kind of self-service mode for any type of disruption that can occur.
Okay. And with that said, the MMB aspect. So we've seen a transition from traditional MMB functionalities to a fully integrated self-service model. And this is what Triplake self-service, smart self-service is all about. Can you talk a little bit about that transition and what you've noticed is included in the transition from an MMB to a fully integrated self-service?
So the main aspect of it would be to actually make it a self-service platform, and that would include kind of taking a step back and starting thinking about what we actually want users to be able to do. There are a lot of functionalities that are already covered through different platforms, typical ones like some rebookings. To some extent, you can do some refunds, purchase items on the website. It all depends on the available technology usually. But there are many aspects of self-service that are possible to book within airlines, but are not possible to book or kind of manage by clients by themselves on the website. And this is actually what is the direction that I would like to go. Just to give a couple of examples, again, we're coming to some kind of disruptions, statuses, all types of statuses, and not only statuses, but also helping users and guide them through what is happening with the reservation, because only showing certain features and only giving the opportunity for the user to have or use a certain feature may not always be enough. They need to also see the value in it. So that means that they need to understand it first, what that feature actually does, because coming back to intuitiveness and building the features so that they are understood by the users and they know how to use them.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. And the disruption management aspect, most traditionally, if your flight is canceled or delayed, you might go up to the agent desk to see what your options are for reaccommodation. But it sounds like providing those recovery options directly to the passenger, whether it's via their email, the airline mobile app, or the website, not only empowers and gives visibility to the passenger, but also allows some resources to be retained by the airline. And is there a tip that you would give for other product owners on how to release a feature like this that is intuitive, so that the passenger who has never seen something like this and normally would go to the agent desk and find out their recovery options, is now able to easily manage and intuitively discover this new disruption feature via the mobile app?
There are a couple of ways that it could be done. It could be marketed via the website, and there can be some information about upcoming features on the website. So that is more of a cross product alignment. But there also are ways to guide through users when they are in the self-service mode. There are some tooltips making some visuals, like some description or some information messages in case there are some clarifications needed. At the beginning, it might be maybe not confusing, but it might be not the most intuitive thing to do if this is actually a new feature. But with our UX team, we are working often on doing a research with how these solutions can be and are already provided for different airlines. If there are, not always it's the case, but with this we can come up with based on the research, we can provide the most user-friendly experience with the information that we find useful for the user. And we are again coming back to the data-driven flow and approach. When we measure the outcome and we can observe how users react to this flow, we can then adjust, and it can be done quite quickly. With implementing the metrics and seeing how users will go through the flow and observing these dynamics, that whether there are some dropouts or users get stuck on certain point, we can then figure out that maybe there is something in the UX or UI that is stopping them from finishing the flow. So I would say that probably there isn't a perfect UI or UX solution that you can come up with to ensure the usability and for it to be seamless. But the most critical part comes after it's introduced, to measure and to see how the users respond to that feature, whether it needs improvement or whether it's performing well. And this can be done, as we talked before, in many different ways.
Yeah. Oh, I love what you said there. Yeah, the most critical part comes after. I think one thing that we've noticed is the desire to get a new feature rollout or a new digital channel rollout perfect the first time. And there's a lot of research that goes in with our product development. Like you said, our UX team, a lot of expertise, research, resources that we use, but there's not a one solution that fits all every single airline. And that's what Branchspace and Triplake really does well, is that customization aspect. So we will do the initial research to understand your customers in your region and the behavior initially, to try to have that initial rollout be top tier, and then further optimize, like you said, optimizing after it to find out where those fine-tuned tweaks can take place to really tailor it to that specific airline and their strategies and their customer base as well.
Exactly.
That's great. I want to know a bit more about how these goals have come into play with our current customers. So, some of the ambitions that you mentioned around smart self-service and check-in, how have those started to take shape through real-world implementations, such as with our customers, Oman Air and KM Malta Airlines?
So we started where it usually starts. We started from the basics. So we provided a solution that was it happened in a fairly quick time frame. That is also an important bit, because talking about implementations and how these kinds of solutions usually evolve for the airline, many times it can take a significant amount of time to come up with a solution that is planned to be perfect or containing everything, which is not the approach that we took from the start. We focused on providing the most critical functionalities for our customers, that they will be ready and feel that this is the product that they would like to release to their customers. And based on that, based on the feedback we have collected, based on different changing priorities, based on our own roadmap, we have then added more to our product. And this is exactly the part that we've talked just a minute before, that the feedback and the most important part comes after, because we didn't lose time to create this perfect end-to-end containing everything solution that we think is right. But we released the most important part, which is a usable product, minimum value product to the users. And based on that, we have been adding more and more and more features and seeing how they perform in real life.
Okay, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And again, that feedback aspect, one example that I can think of for our clients is bringing in those NPS and feedback features. So although it's not directly connected to check-in and smart self-service, that gives an opportunity for customers to provide feedback on those stages, which then can inform the future rollouts of the Triplake modules.
Exactly. That also kind of helped us to run into a very big trap with these kinds of long projects, because a lot of the times it happens that when there is a project that is planned for a couple of years, before it's released, it's already outdated technologically. So this is what we want to avoid. And this is why we release quicker. And this is why we basically do not want to focus on, building a comprehensive features that would take years to develop, because that is inevitable. The technology is growing so fast that most of the companies, and ours included, it's just not the most efficient approach to build these kinds of products, and at the end of the day waste time on development of something that will be outdated inevitably at the day of release.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That agility, I know for Triplake we do 2-week sprints, so that helps a lot in order to be able to make those accommodations and changes before technology goes out of style, so to speak.
Exactly.
And so one more question related to your specific Triplake modules. We've talked a lot about the benefits and the value that check-in and smart self-service provide, but I would love to know, what are the biggest USPs that you think compared to other airline retail platforms? Are there any, top 3 to 5 standout USPs for Triplake check-in and smart self-service?
I think the most important is creating the most adaptable and agile solution. I've noticed that this is one of the biggest pain points, that a lot of solutions are not agile. Airlines understandably want to provide state-of-art modern UI user experience, because Also, judging from my own experience, the more outdated UI looks, the more trustworthy it is. So from my perspective, it's also the most critical part is to create this state-of-art modern experience for the user so that we can build trust. We can then, on top of building trust, we can present users with a personalized agile experience that can be modified and adjusted according to whatever metrics we want to use, and that will differ per airline, per market, per region. That's why it's one of the most important items as well, to be able to use the data-driven approach, because when we combine the two, and also on top of that we add a seamless experience, well-performing solution with limited amount of hiccups and errors, and if so, for them to be handled properly, this will stand out, because there isn't a lot of solutions, at least not that I've seen, that are present on the market like that.
Okay, yeah, thank you for those. The building that trust, I really like that. It's a great, what you said, it goes along with a lot of the things that you've already mentioned is, we want to build a solid foundation first, not only for the airline and their technology and their ecosystem, but also for the customers. And if you can't build that foundation of trust, then how are you going to, get them to come back for those personalized and tailored offerings? So yeah, I really like that. And again, especially on a global scale, there's regions and customer preferences and behaviors are very, very different. Even the type of systems that they use, like Western use more Android and Apple mobile apps, and in different regions, they'll use Huawei. And so that is one addition we've made in the last, recently, is adding that operating system to our platform so that airlines and consumers all over the world are experiencing those seamless digital channels.
Precisely.
Thank you so much for those detailed responses about Triplake self-service, smart self-service, and check-in. And then with that, we know that Triplake is a great fit for airlines committed to a broader transformation strategy. Are there common challenges that Triplake check-in and smart self-service solve more easily than traditional platforms? I know you had mentioned adaptable and agile. Is there any additional ones that come to mind when for these modules?
I would say probably one of the biggest ones is the focus, because this is our main focus, to allow users to do as much as possible. And this is our main goal. And this is why we can provide all of this other adaptability and more agile approach, because we want users to be able to use these features for them to basically self-service themselves in any way possible. And this is our main focus. And I think once we work in this direction, everything else is kind of falling into the right place, because that's our goal. And this is why we create the experience that we can then release and say this is the best because we think it's the best, and we can measure it if it's the best, and if not, we can adjust it so it's the best.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it all comes back to Branchspace's missions and values, core missions and values. We want to disrupt the industry and break down barriers in legacy technology. So it's a really good foundation for us to start with. When we understand, we want to make sure everything that we produce and make aligns with our values. And one of the things that you said, was the holistic aspect. So it's not, everything is very customizable for our customers. It's not about, out of box, everything's the same, delivery is the same for all of our customers. We really want to make sure that it's tailored to their needs and goals, and can be, grow over time as their customers and strategies change. That's
Yes.
awesome. All right, Gosia, we are almost at our final. I just have one more question for you, and it's what is your top 2 bucket list destinations?
Overall or for this year?
We'll do for this year, yeah.
So for this year, it's Italy. I'm going there this year. I'm going there for vacation, but it's 3 months ahead. So I'm pretty sure I will probably come up with something else as well. But on my dream bucket list, let's say, there are a couple of destinations. One of them is my big time dream, which is Peru and Argentina. And then on the other side of the world, New Zealand and Australia. Those ones are probably the most ones that my heart is longing for.
Excellent. Yeah. You're going for some of the jungle vibes, it sounds like. I know New Zealand, very jungly, and same thing with Peru. So, some good animals and maybe water experiences. But Italy is also very popular. I think JP in the last episode also said Italy. So I can completely understand why that's a popular choice. All right. Well, that is it for today. I want to thank you again, Gosia, for joining me. Is there any last minute things that you would like to say, comments, or even plugs to give?
Thank you for inviting me. It was a pleasure and happy to be here.
Awesome. Yeah, pleasure is all ours. Well, that's it for today's episode of Future Picks podcast brought to you by Branchspace. Thank you for your time, and we'll see you all next time.